This is chapter 2.5 and 2.6, multiplying and dividing fractions. So how do we multiply fractions? Well, if you recall from your previous math courses, we simply multiply the top by the top and the bottom by the bottom of each of the fractions being multiplied. Basically what that means is you're multiplying the numerators together and the denominators together. So here are a few examples to get us practicing the idea of multiplying fractions. So now would be a good time to take a pause and try these questions out for yourself. Okay, so in question A, 2/3 times 4/5, we would simply multiply the 2 and the 4 together, those are the numerators, and we would get 8. We multiply the 3 and the 5 together, we get 15, so we get 8/15. In question B, 5/7 times 2. Now remember that 2 is really 2/1, so therefore, 2/1. So therefore, I just rewrote it here as 5/7 times 2/1. You could actually skip this step, of your work, but I just showed it here for the purposes of demonstration. So if you multiply the 5 and the 2, we get 10, and 7 times the 1, we get 7, so therefore 10/7 is our final answer. In question C, we have a mixed number, so we'll need to convert that into a improper fraction first. So 1 and 1/8 converts to 9/8. I've changed the 3 into 3/1 so that's easier to see what we're multiplying. So we're going to multiply the numerators. 9 by the 3 is 27, and 8 by the 1 gives us 27/8. And finally, in question D, we have 3 fractions being multiplied together. But don't be afraid of the question. Just because there's more fractions doesn't make it necessarily any harder. You just have to multiply one more time, that's all. So we're going to multiply all these numerators together. 3 times 5 times 1 gives you 15. The denominators, 4 times 2 is 8 times 3 more, that's 24. So we got 15/24. This one, however, reduces because both numbers divide by 3. So therefore 5/8 is our final answer. Now one of the terms you'll need to know about is the idea of a reciprocal. Now what is a reciprocal? Well, you can find a reciprocal of a fraction simply by flipping the fraction. So for instance, if we had the fraction a/b, then its reciprocal will simply be b/a. Now here I have a few examples to get us practicing the idea of finding the reciprocals. So now would be a good time to pause the video and see if you can do these on your own first. So in question A, I have 4/5. Its reciprocal, if we switch the numerator and the denominator, would simply be 5/4. In question B, we have the number 5. So remember that 5 is really 5/1. So therefore, when we find the reciprocal, when we flip the numerator and the denominator, its reciprocal would be 1/5. In question C, I've used some variables to supposedly trick you, but simply if we had m/n, its reciprocal is going to be n/m. Not really a trick, is there? And finally, this last one, 2 1/4, well, because it's written as a mixed number, we simply need to change this into an improper fraction first. So if we change 2 1/4 into an improper fraction, we get 9/4. So then we invert the fraction, so we switch the numerator and the denominator, and we get ourselves 4/9, being the reciprocal of 9/4, or you could say it's the reciprocal of 2 1/4 as well. Now, what happens if we were to multiply any number by its reciprocal? Well, if you think about it, if I took any number, and I'm going to represent any number by using variables x and y, so here I have x over y. If I multiplied it by its reciprocal would be y over x. So if I were to multiply these two ideas, well, x times y is xy, y times x is yx, or really it's xy. Doesn't matter how you multiply two numbers, doesn't matter what order you multiply them in, it's going to be the same thing. So therefore it's going to work out to be 1. Now, how do we divide fractions? Well, some of you may recall the little saying, you don't have to wonder why, just invert and multiply. Well, here's some examples. So, in order to use this rule, all we need to do is invert the second fraction and change the division sign into a multiplication sign, and therefore now it becomes a multiplication question instead. So here, try dealing with these 3 sets of questions. Alright, so we have 1/3 divided by 3/4. It wants you to show your equivalent fractions before you simplify your answer. So we're going to flip the second fraction, 3/4, into 4/3 instead. And of course we're going to change the division sign into a multiplication sign. So therefore I've used brackets to represent multiplication. So I have 1/3. Remember, the first fraction remains the same. The second fraction becomes 4/3. So now it just simply becomes a multiplication question. So I multiply the top by the top, bottom by the bottom. So I get 4/9. In question B, 4/5 divided by 1/2. I flipped the second fraction to 2/1. So I've rewritten it as 4/5 times 2/1. I multiply the top by the top, I get 8/5. And finally, in question C, I have a mixed number again, so I need to change that into an improper fraction. So I'll do that, and at the same time, I've inverted the second fraction to 8/3. So 2 5/6 turns out to be 17/6. The second fraction has been inverted to 8/3. Now 17 by 8, I might need to use a calculator, and the numbers are getting a little big, so that's fine. So go ahead and do that. 136 over 6 by 3 is 18. Now because both numerator and denominator are both even, they at least divide by 2, so you can reduce this one. It reduces down to 68/9. So that concludes this lesson on multiplying and dividing fractions.